Hello, hello. Hi, Manguska. You're a little bit scared. Why is that? um, if you make mistakes during these hands, well, that's an opportunity to learn, so you don't have to see it as being scared. You know, the more mistakes we find, the more leaks you can improve on. Hi, everyone. I know there's not a lot of people here yet, but for the ones who are going to watch the stream later, I'm Alex. We are doing this weekly cash game stream every week. That's why it's weekly. um, and we receive hands from our community to analyze during the stream. If you want your hands featured on this video, make sure to join our Discord and send them over. Also, we are preparing a bootcamp. The site is going to launch soon, but it's going to be on the 25th of November, and we're going to approach topics such as playing versus recreationals, how to approach theory in practice. We're also offering personalized database reviews, so yeah, also keep an eye on that. Hi, Steedy. Hi, Manguska again. No, don't talk to yourself like that. I'm definitely I don't think that these hands are gonna be dumb. You might make mistakes, but that's normal. It happens to everyone. Okay, so that being said, let's get into the hands. Just to mention, this is the first time I see the hands, so I didn't look at them before. We call here an open from button. We call big blind against an open from the button with ace-4 suited. This is fine. We should also mix in some 3-bets with this type of hands from time to time, but calling is definitely good. Villain bets 3/4, which again, this is a board where you can go for a range bet, or you could bet polarized. You could even construct a strategy with an overbet. So I'm not sure what stakes this was played in. Let me. Okay, so this seems to be 25 NL. I think at 25 NL it's more likely for people to be a bit too value heavy with this type of strategies, but still not folding top pair here. Para Froome says all in. Yeah, let's not do that. Turns a 4, which is nice. We now have 2 pair, and we face a 3/4 spot size bet. Here I think Villain should probably use an overbet sizing, but maybe he's not that great of a rag. I guess the sizing is fine, but yeah, I would expect people to overbet, and we go for a big raise. So again, in theory, we shouldn't have a lot of raises versus these polar sizes, and if we think of ranges here, he's supposed to have ace queen still. I mean, again, this should be an overbet, right? In practice, button might go for an overbet with ace queen and queens and a7, and just use this smaller size with maybe weaker hands. So in that case, I think raising is more than fine, because there's a lot of worse hands to get value from. But if in position is using this as a single size strategy, then I think it gets a bit thin to check raise here, because he's going to have all a7, he's going to have all ace queen, which we don't have. And yeah, that being said, ace4 gets a bit thin to raise, so it really depends how we think about this hand. The lower he goes, the more we are allowed to raise, but okay, the first factor is this is going to be a bit on the thin side, and the other problem is this board being so draw heavy, so there's 2 flush draws, there's some straight draws available as well. It's going to be quite difficult for us with this type of hand on the river, because it's going to get even thinner to shove it, even on a blank, but because there's a lot of cards that are going to complete draws as well, and some overcards which are going to bring him better to pairs, I think it's a bit tricky to play this on the river, so I would prefer a call. I don't think this is terrible or anything, but yeah, I think I would go for a call, and river's a jack, so this is why I'm saying it gets a bit tricky now. So now we check and he goes for a shove. Yeah, I think we need to call here because there are still draws that miss. I don't know, he might just sometimes show up with, if he's weak or maybe a recreational, he might just show up with something like Queen Jack of Spades. But yeah, it's not a spot where I'm super happy. And I think I would prefer to just call turn because of these reasons. It's quite difficult to be happy with this hand in this line on the river. Um, yeah, I'm unfortunate situation. But I think I like the check on the river because with this line it's quite unlikely we're gonna get called by worse hands, but at least we give him the opportunity to bluff if he has something like, I don't know, maybe people won't really turn enough a pair into a bluff at these stakes, but maybe something like Jack 10 or 5-6 or whatnot. Still, I would say we mostly want to call this hand. Maybe we can check really quickly with GTO Wizard. So we already have the spot, big blind versus button. Again, take this with a pinch of salt. Ranges might differ a little bit. What was the board? Ace, queen, 7. And we see if we let GTO Wizard pick, it just picks strategy around 110. Here he bets 3/4. We see we never fold a pair, and that makes sense. And again on the turn, this is just a very good turn for imposition, a very good board in general, very nice texture. So button really wants to put money in the pot, therefore the solver wants to overbet the flop, wants to overbet the turn, but this opponent is probably a bit on the weaker side and just picks a 3/4 size. And now we see that this is what we are mostly going to see in this spot. Very low raise frequency, and the reason behind this is the fact that he is supposed to be polar when he bets in position. So it's basically his strongest hands, his top part of the range, and then his weakest hands that are bluffs. Okay, the bluffs will have some equity, and there might be an argument made that we might want to raise a bit more here because people bet too equity driven. But in general, we don't really want to have raises against these turn double barrels because the more polar ranges, the less we want to raise against it, right? We're just going to get the bluffs to fold and the value hands to call. So in general, I would advise for not raising this. And again, if we look at what we want to check raise, if we do have this low amount of check raises, it's basically the best top pair plus, and this ace-4 gets a bit thin for the reasons mentioned before. Okay, so I'm not sure if looking at this sim is going to be super relevant moving further, so let's just move into and look at the next hand. Don't want to get too hung up on a hand or anything. So here I assume villain opens to 3.4 big blinds. I think I'm almost certain this guy is going to be a recreational, first of all because of the open size, and second because his stack is broken, so he doesn't have 100 big blinds. What I would I would consider 3-betting here just because this is a hand, okay, it has high cards, it plays a bit better in lower SPRs, it's offsuit, so it's not going to play great out of position, but this all depends on what I've seen this player doing. So if I know he's a wide recreational and he's always opening to these weird sizes, I'm sorry that the button covers it, but it's 3.4 big blinds, then I would definitely start 3-betting this hand. If he's usually limping or going 2x and now out of a sudden he's going 3.4, then I would not like to 3-bet this and I would just go for a call. We check and we face, I don't know what bet, hold the manager. Developers, if you hear me, do something with this. Or it's actually my fault because I don't think I renewed the license. And we see a big bet here. So I'm obviously relatively happy with my hand, but if we correlate the big sizing on pre-flop, the big sizing on the flop, then I would you know, it is a bit of an alarm bell. But again, we're playing against the recreational, so I'm still quite happy with my hand. It's just they will very often turn their hand face up, so um, yeah, we need to pay attention to that and be able to make some hero folds when it's obvious they have a really good hand. Again, I don't see how much he bets, but close to pot. Again, this makes me wonder a bit, because what you see in population tendencies in mass database analysis is that when they start barreling big, and especially around these pot sizes, correlate that with the big open pre-flop, this is usually a sign of strength. Now, I think this hand is still strong enough, but I would start being quite careful. Um, and he goes for another pot size. But now this would all depend on the reads that I have on this villain. So let's see if we have any stats on him. Actually, I just have 12 hands, so it's not gonna show up. Alex is very nice poker player. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um, okay, so here, yeah. I think if this guy is a completely unknown recreational, I might call, but I don't really like it. If, or maybe not, I would probably fold. I think if I saw this person bluffing a lot, being very active at the table, putting in a lot of money and a lot of pots with big bets, then I would definitely call, but otherwise I would tend towards folding. I mean, it does seem a bit nitty, but I don't know. This is pretty much a tell on every street, and I would tend to be a bit more careful against these sizing schemes. Again, we're obviously playing against the recreational, so there is no need to put that into a solver. We open, we get called by probably again a recreational in the small blind, because his stack is broken, and also, you know, not many rags call in these positions. They mostly 3-bet or fold, and now we see a half pot donk bet. We're definitely not folding here. I think calling makes sense. I think raising also makes some sense, just because then we probably end up putting a bit less money overall in the pot against the 10, but that's like the second reason. The main reason for raising here is that when recreationals donk, they most often have a very mergy range, so he's going to have here a lot of 4x, a lot of 7x, maybe even 8, a lot of 5-6, 9-8, even if we block that jack 9, 5-8, whatnot. And all those hands are, I mean, a lot of those hands are going to want to put a small bet in just to realize equity. So because that's a lot the way a lot of recreationals think about the game, you know, we need to punish that by raising very thin for value, and I think that's a very effective strategy to use against recreationals. So yeah, I wouldn't mind the call, but I think a raise would also be good against half pot. Maybe not as much, but especially if he went for a smaller size, I think I would like a small raise here. We go for a call, turns a 5, he checks. And again, at this point, I think we can definitely put in a 40% half pot value bet, because of how we analyzed his range on the flop. He's still going to get here with a bunch of hands that are now pair plus draw, just a middle pair or something like that, a lot of gut shots. So there is a lot of hands that we can get value from here, and also our hand needs some protections if we get something like a random king jack to fold if he bets the flop for whatever reason, because he's a fish. Yeah, also folding that is not bad for us. I like the bet. I think I would go for a smaller size though, because we are basically trying to get value from a range that is quite low and mergy. But yeah, if this opponent is on the stationy side, if he's never folding here a 6, an 8, a 9, then I think we can go bigger, and I start liking this size a bit more. He calls, reverse the 9, he checks, and yeah, we definitely have to try and get some value now. What size would I like to go here? I think I'm mostly looking to get value from a 10 or some low 2 pairs and some bluff catchers, so I think something, the biggest size I would go here is spot, maybe a bit under, so 80%, something like that, I think I would use. But now we go small. I'm not sure what the reasoning behind this bet size is. Maybe you could tell us in the chat. So, yeah, I think you found the bet in the right spots. It's just, it seems like, when you have a relatively marginal hand, I actually take it back. I think a bigger bet works better here against this line than something like 40% pot, so props for that. But it's still a bit of a more marginal hand here on the turn. We go big, and then when we have a very strong hand on the river, we go small. So you think he would bluff you, you're basically saying you're trying to induce a raise here. Yeah, I don't think that is a very good thought process against this player on this texture, because again, if we think back to what we assume his flop range is, that's going to be quite mergy, and drawy. Then on the turn, even those draws, a lot of them are going to hit a pair or whatnot, and by the river, even more of those draws are going to hit some kind of pair. So a 9 now has a 9, and I think it's very unlikely, even for recreational players, unless you have a big read that he is extremely aggressive and going crazy against the small bets on the river. I think it's very unlikely he's just going to turn a pair into a check raise bluff here. I think what's more likely is that he's going to look you up by calling, because he might imagine, okay, so many flash draws miss, there are some straight draws that miss, so let's just call here. So yeah, even though those, like that kind of thought process that he might bluff you might be applicable in some spots, I think by using these small sizes overall, you're just going to burn a lot of money against recreationals, because most often what they do is just call you wide, and when they start check raising and or check shoving here, I would actually already be a bit worried, because there's still a lot of straights that beat you, and I think it's very unlikely for them to just start check shoving with miss flash draws. So I think it's just better to go for value ourselves and try to get bluff catch by a 10x or a 7 or whatever else he might have. People tend to really underbluff when they go for check raises on the river, and because of that, we shouldn't really try to induce them much, because we're not going to get to the desired result. Opening and cutoff, we call big blind. So yeah, I think this is a fine call. We probably call most often. I'm wondering if you might be a bit under 3-betting though from the big blind, because I think there were some hands that I was like, okay, we can mix in a 3-bet here, but he mostly called. Yeah, I know you are interested in the bootcamp. We're going to come back with details quite soon, but there we also provide a personalized database review, and you can see where most of your leaks are pre-flop and post-flop and so on. Okay, so we call, we flop a flash, we face half pot bet, and we go for a call. I think this is fine. I think we can definitely check raise too from time to time. He is supposed to bet here smaller, usually, if he bets, and not super often. So seeing a half pot bet, again, I'm thinking this might be a bit of a tell, but we still have a very strong hand here, and we basically want to get value from ace queen, from ace x of clubs, kings, aces, whatever sets. So I think I would mostly lean towards a check raise when I see this, which I don't think it's like a strategy he worked on. But yeah, I think check calling is definitely fine too. He goes for another bet here. And I guess on the turn it might get a bit thinner to check raise. I think we can still do it from time to time. I don't think this guy's a very good player. He calls rivers and ace. Yeah, I think at this point I would just bet small. I think that's probably the best thing to do, just go for a really small bet. Because that way we can get called by a few weaker flashes. I don't think this is the kind of texture where people are just going to find random shoves to bluff with against a small size, and also this is not the kind of hand that we can put a lot of more money in. Um, and we also avoid getting having to put more money into the pot against him if we check and he bets, because yeah, he might have some bluffs, but I don't think this is a texture where he's going to find a lot of bluffs either. So I think the best thing to do is just to go for a small bet here ourselves and hope to get called by worst. And if we get raised, just fold. But to be honest, I'm not an expert in these monotone boards in my own study. I'm like, monotone board, I studied later, because they just don't come up as frequently. But yeah, I think it's quite an interesting hand, and we can check in the solver if I was right with this thought process or not. Um, so yeah, I guess this guy's probably a fish. This hand shouldn't be open from the cutoff, and then he really overplayed it on flop and turn. Um, but yeah, because of this, because he's going to show up with a bunch of hands like this with some weaker offsuit flashes and stuff, I think it makes sense to go for a small bet. Although blocking both the jack and the 10 is not great, but I still think our hand is worth a small bet. Hello, Davide Caramia. Welcome to the stream. What's up? Okay, so let's move back to GTO Wizard and see how this hand is supposed to work in theory. I know it was cutoff versus big blind, but just because of how wide the ranges turn out to be, we're just gonna, and for the sake of time, we can use the big blind versus button range. So we see already he's supposed to bet quite small here, but he does not. So I think looking at this sim might be a bit useless for the way the hand was actually played. You see he's not even supposed to ever bet that hand. But yeah, we didn't really know that that's his range, so let's just see how it's supposed to work in theory. We see we are actually never supposed to raise this hand, but again, in practice, if people bet more with this weaker hand, is fine. I guess the reason for this is that, as I said by the river, we don't really want to block too high cards when we have a flush. So with Jack 10 suited, with Jack 9 suited, we block a lot of lower flashes in position should have, but then when we go down to the lower Jack X, we start check raising more. And it's the same with the King X flashes, the King X flashes, and even with the Ace highs. Okay, so we go for a call, and turn was a 3 of spades. We check and he bets again. Now, if this was a bit too thin to check raise on the flop, actually we can check raise it on the turn from time to time. And especially if we know we're facing an opponent like this, it's just betting way too thin for value. So nice, we found this raise from time to time. He calls, and the river is an ace. Again, quite an interesting spot. And we see we actually have some bigger size. Is two pair here a bet for value? No, it can't be. Yeah, of course it's not. So apparently we know what we bluff here. If we check raise some two pairs on the turn, which we should, those should be our river bluffs, which is quite interesting, right? And then the big size seems to be reserved for some nut flushes, especially the ones that are not suited, so don't block lower flushes, and then the lower flushes are just going for a smaller size. And Jack 10 here, yeah, it's always supposed to bet. So even though I didn't study a lot of mono boards, it seems like I'm not that bad with them. Yeah, of course, two pair is going to be a bluff. I had a small mental glitch there, sorry. Okay, let's move back to the hands. Oops. Oops. A technical glitch as well. Okay, next hand. We have queens on the small blind with 3-bet against a cutoff open. Again, I would assume this villain is probably not a great regular, or maybe a fish because of the open size. I don't think a lot of people open big on the cutoff unless maybe there's a whale on the button or on the big blind, so let's not make too many assumptions. Davide says it makes sense. We don't check raise any bluff without the club, so we need to bluff two pairs. Yeah, it does make sense, and I think this is why I like going through random hands. You can just learn concepts like that. That I'm probably not going to learn very soon if I just try to learn strategy. Like when am I gonna look at this spot? And I think it's probably a concept that you can apply in multiple spots, and it's good to know. Okay, back to the hand. We get called. We see a flop of Jack 7-3. I think here I would prefer going for a polar c-bet with a big bet or a check. You could make some arguments that at these stakes imposition tends to overfold to range bets, so we could maybe range bet for 40% or so on. But I think here it gets quite connected, right? So 8-9, 9-10, 5-6, they are all straight draws. Flash draws are also possible, which is better for imposition. So I think I don't like a range bet here that much, even though I don't think it would be a huge mistake or anything. I just think polar strategy with a big size performs better. So I see we go 1/3 here. I guess for this size we can just range bet. He calls. Turn is a 10 of diamonds. So at this point, I think we need to be quite careful, right? Because first of all, 8-9 gets there, flashes get there. So the first thing we need to do in order to be able to value bet other combos, except for flashes, would be to size down. And I think queens, considering it's still queens, especially with a diamond, considering it's still better than Jack X, and we size down should be good enough to still be called by worst. And I think it's also the type of hand that needs quite a bit of protection still, and because of that, I think it's going to be a relatively high frequency. But I don't think we're gonna bet super often with our range on this board, so probably not a pure bet, but I think it's going to be the highest, one of the highest frequency bets in our range. But again, I might be wrong, so this is something that we can check with GTO Wizard later. The river's the queen. Hmm. Yeah, I think this is quite an interesting spot. Because there's still straights in his range, there are still flashes, and now that the river's a queen, it's a bit less likely that he's gonna call worse. Um, Especially that ace king also makes a straight. It's not like he's gonna have ace king here very often, if ever. He might sometimes with a diamond, but it's more about the fact that he might get a bit scared now. Hmm. Yeah, quite an interesting spot. I'm not exactly sure. I'm thinking betting small might make some sense and trying to get called by stuff like I don't know, ace jack with the diamond, maybe king jack with the diamond, maybe king queen that got here, although we really heavily blocked that. Some sets he might have, but then if he raises here against a small size, I think, especially if he's too wide pre-flop, it's not that difficult to, I mean, yeah, I think it is gonna be quite difficult to find bluffs. So I guess betting small and folding to a raise because it's probably going to be under bluffed makes some sense. Yeah, I think that's probably the best because if we check here, would he reopen the action with tens and jacks and so on? Probably, but he's also going to have his value hands, and I think this way, if we bet small, we can still get some value from worse hands while losing the minimum against bigger ones, against better ones. Or check calling is also an option, but I'm not sure population is going. I mean, I'm almost sure it's going to be another bluffed spot, and our hand is gonna be quite close to a bluff catcher, even though it looks strong. So yeah, quite an interesting hand. Thanks for providing this. I think there will be something to learn from it. So we do bet small, which I like, and we face a click raise. Yeah, I mean, whatever. I think we need to call this, but I'm not happy. Yeah, horrible. Um, I mean, I do expect to lose almost all the time, but as you see here, we only need to be good 13% of the times in order to make this a break-even call, and we never know if this guy is a recreational and does this with sevens or jacks because he thinks he's strong enough or whatnot. I'm really not happy in this spot, but for this size against a guy who's likely to be a wreck, I think we can call. Okay, so as I said, quite an interesting hand. Let's go back to our solver friend. By the way, if you are want to get GTO Wizard to study yourself, you can find a discount link in the description of this video and every other video. um, okay, I'm not sure why I can't. Small blind versus cut of 3 bet. I'm not sure why. I can't filter it. So small blind versus cutoff, board is jack 7, was it right? Jack 7, 3. Yeah, rack opponent definitely call. How do I, how do you see a 10% here? Um, you mean on the river to bet 10%? I don't think it's gonna. I think just going a quarter is or like 1/3 is probably gonna be better because I'm not. It's not like a spot where I want to get shoved on or trying to induce races. It's a triple Broadway board with straights there, with flushes there, so it's very hard to induce bluffs if that's what you're saying. And then in terms of the range that calls, I think he's probably gonna be quite inelastic to 10% or quarter pot. Yeah, why would you think 10% would be better than a quarter? I'm not sure, maybe I'm missing something, but if you give me your reasoning for it. Okay, so we see again we should probably use a bit of a bigger size on this board, especially against cutoff. Um, I'm not sure if you range bet here or if you use a mixed strategy. I'm just going to leave it like this for the sake of time. And the turn. Fuck, I'm so bad with memory. Turn was a 10. Like ace jack off, no diamond would fall to a 25. Um, maybe exploitatively it could be fine. So let's see first if we were correct about the turn rate. So yes, we do need to size down. I thought 40 is going to be good enough, but considering this complete straights, flushes, two pairs as well, um, I guess a factor will be that here if we don't range bet we don't have as many tens either. But anyway, we do need to size down, and queens with a diamond, it's actually not gonna be the highest frequency bet in our range. King jack is for some reason, but yeah, it is bet at quite a high frequency. 10% for value fall to a jam. Yeah, that's so I think there might be a few extra hands that might call the 10% and not a quarter. But then if we think about it, we're going to make way more money when we get called by a quarter against a quarter size compared to 10%. So I'm not sure if we mind folding a few extra hands. And then there might be the downside that some people are just going to be a bit more willing to bluff against a 10% sizing compared to a 25. But it might be. I think it's probably going to be close. And then river is a queen. Check out river. They should have more bluffs than value with bit worse sets, two pairs, and bluff low pairs plus air. Yeah, I think that would also be an option. So we see here we are actually checking range, which I did not really expect, because we still have our flashes. Apparently we're doing quite bad in the medium part of the range though, so yeah, this is weird. Even though we are an equity favorite, we check range here. Yeah, there is some EV loss by betting. And if we check, I do agree with UI, there should be these bluffs here in his range, which are quite a lot, but I just don't think people are finding, let's see what they are supposed to bluff with here. So, okay, they might find this. Okay, these are flashes. Yeah, again, this sim is going to get very weird here because no one plays like that. I mean, who calls here 8 queen half the times with the diamond but then fold a set? Queens is definitely gonna be a call. Yeah, I guess check calling is an option. It's just I'm not sure if one, people value bet thin enough, and two, if they will find enough bluffs with these under pairs. I think if you look at mass database analysis, what you consistently see is that when there aren't a lot of bluffs available, like natural bluffs, and villains have to turn random pairs into bluffs and stuff like that, such as Jack 10 here, Queen Jack, and stuff like that, the spots are just going to be. I mean, Queen Jack here, I guess it's gonna be a bit of a combo bet that gets worse to call, better to fold. But yeah, if people are not betting thin enough and don't bluff enough, then the EV of check calling is just going to be much worse. But considering that we are supposed to check range on the river anyway, yeah, it's a very weird spot. Yeah, only works if they find the bluffs, as you say. And then I'm also thinking, okay, we're supposed to check range here because they are supposed to find bluffs, they are supposed to find thin value bets, and that is why that is the way we get value with the netted part of our range. But then if we check here with ace king, right, and they always check back queen jack. Let's say we're facing an 8, he always checks back jacks and jack 10 and whatnot. Then we're just losing so much value with our check. So I'm not sure how much insight this sim is actually giving us for how we're supposed to play in practice. I think it's an interesting spot though, and I'll save it for later. Might play with some node blocks, might do a video on it or something. Okay. Let's go back to the hands. Yeah, very player dependent, I agree. Okay, Radu, which is probably a Romanian name, 3-bets us. I'm not sure about the size because of that stupid button. We 4-bet, he calls, turn is queen, 5-4. Monotone, again, so many monotone boards. I said I'm not an expert in them, but I do assume that the way these spots work is that we're gonna have way more offsuit combos because of our pairs and because we don't really 4-bet stuff like 6-7, like 5-4 is blocked by the board, but those jack 10s, whatnot, that he might 3-bet and call to 4-bet sometimes. So I will assume the monotone boards are not as great for us, and we probably want to start checking when we don't have a club here. So I think I will mostly lean towards a check with this combo, but I'm not 100% sure because still we're going to have a range advantage. He's not really supposed to have ace queen offsuit here very often, but we do. We have an overpair advantage, so I still think we and the other thing that comes into play here that is very relevant is that the lower the SPR is, the thinner we can get the money in. So if this was a single raise spot and let's say we were 200 big blinds deep, we need to be quite careful when we start putting money into the pot out of position. But when we are in a 4-bet pot and the SPR is already very low, then we can bet a bit thinner. I still think aces here needing no protection and without a club can and should find a decent frequency of checks, but we can check that after the hand. He calls, turns a 10. Again, at this point, this is why I wouldn't, I mean, not this is why, but I think I would rather check this hand and then try to make it a 2-street game on the turn and river while assessing the run out. Here, again, there's still a bunch of bad rivers. He can have queens, he can have tens, but we have aces, so I'm not exactly sure. I guess we can check sometimes. I guess we can bet sometimes. I think it's gonna be quite close. I'm not sure what size we bet. Guess it's gonna be half. And we go for a check shove. Yeah, I don't think I like this much. I think it's a bit of an overplay considering our opponent can have a lot of flushes. We don't really block any of those. He can have the sets as well, and like kings, if we're trying to get called by kings, that should be a shove pre-flop. So yeah, I don't think like aces is a super strong hand here. I'd rather maybe let him bluff, even though this spot would be quite under bluffed. I think this is a bit of an overplay. And I guess we need to realize where this hand is in our range, because we are also, if we 4-bet correctly, we're also gonna have flushes, we're also gonna have queens, we're also gonna have tens, we're gonna have aces with a club, we're gonna have kings with a club, which I assume it's gonna do much better here than aces without a club. So yeah, I think this is gonna be a bit of an overplay. Yeah, kind of expected that, because there is not a lot of worse hands that we're supposed to get called by. Like, what do you expect to get called here in such a strong line when you check shove? So yeah, I think I would be a bit more careful. And even though aces here look like a strong hand, when we look at the board, is not that much. Yes, I am an overplayer. Well, that's why we do these sessions. Maybe it's going to help you a bit to um, not just look at the value of your hands. And I think it's quite common to get attached to aces here when we see well, a very strong hand and it's already a 4-bet pot. We kind of expect to win the pot before actually getting into it, and then we lose the grip on reality, to put it like that, and we forget to ask ourselves, okay, where is actually this hand in my range, and how does this hand do against the range of my opponent in this line? And yeah, if you go back and ask yourself those questions, you might avoid some of these overplays in the future. Okay, let's do one more hand and call it a session. Am I on the... Oh, actually, yeah, let's just check the solver for this one, because I think it's going to be quite an interesting hand. Let's just pick it as Kato versus button. Queen 5-4 it was. Again, Kato versus button, it might be a bit... So we see we bet aces quite often. It might be a bit different, because he's gonna have a bit more, he's gonna have ace queen offsuit, and that might actually have an influence. Solver will surprise me that it does bet aces more often than I thought. Okay, makes sense. And it actually goes for a big size. Yeah, because he's supposed to call pretty much every under pair with a club, and when the queen is on the board, he actually doesn't have that many flashes as I thought initially. And especially if we look at these aims, it doesn't have all these either. So yeah, my mistake. Good bet with aces. Apparently you should coach me here. Cum merge treba in această seară. How are the things going tonight? Quite good. Yeah, we found some interesting hands here. Some stuff to learn from. So yeah, nice hands to look over. This is probably gonna be the last one, because it's already quite late. Okay, what was the turn? 10. The unlucky 10. Okay, yeah. Who's 3-betting deuces and calling 4-bets? That is actually correct. So yeah, let's look a bit into these ranges. I think I might have 3-bet button versus MP. Oh, and then we need to call a 4-bet. So let's give him some of these suited connectors. I think these are gonna be in there. Might have some of these, even though he should not really. Okay, let's maybe keep it like this. Looks better now. Under the gun. Yeah, I don't think people really 4-bet these too often. Those will probably increase our frequency on this board, and yeah, maybe let's do this. Okay. Okay, now we just bet range. Again, not the expert of monotone, as I said, but I'm happy to also learn stuff from these streams. So we can just bet range here out of position. With I'm actually gonna take a look at reports and see which port we have to check here quickly. So we bet they call. Is this realistic? I guess so. It's not that unintuitive to defend here on this board. Okay, maybe some people would have some raises. The 10, the majestic 10. Okay, and now we keep barreling. What did we do on the turn? So, we check the turn. Okay, apparently we are supposed to keep barreling and they are supposed to keep calling all of these. Yeah, I'm actually quite surprised by how this spot works. Like, they're calling ace king. Having decent frequency of ace queen. I wonder if they don't have this if we keep barreling as often. They still have a bunch of flushes. Okay, well, apparently I'm a bit too passive in this spot. But then I think if we do check, they bet. Okay, so it is solver approved. Well, interesting. Yeah, I would think that is too thin. I don't understand though, like, seems we're only getting called by flushes and some ace king. Okay, and ace queen, I guess this is gonna be enough. Ace queen with a clap. Okay, I'm quite surprised by this hand. Apparently the solver says it's well played. I'm not sure, like, in practice, I think people will call some ace queen here. Or probably call ace king with the ace of clubs as well if they have it pre-flop, so I guess it's fine. Yeah, again, so what I was saying at the beginning of this hand, that when the SPR gets lower, then we can just get the money in much thinner for value. That is correct, as you see here. But I just didn't listen to my own advice. Apparently we do need to get it in even thinner than I initially thought. Okay, so thanks everyone for being here. Thanks Maguska again for the hands. I guess there are a few of them left. We can go through those next week. Yeah, thanks for joining and being active in the chat, everyone, and hopefully, yeah, you learned something from these streams. I did, and yeah, make sure to keep an eye out on the channel. We're gonna post some new videos soon. We're gonna come up with details about the bootcamp. Cheers, and we'll be in touch. Bye.